everybody. Welcome to our third workshop. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited to get started on this workshop. I think you all are going to enjoy our guest speaker this evening. I think gonna learn a lot. Our topic of our workshop this evening is on the topic of how do I prepare for a professional interview? So you're going into the interview, maybe you've gone to career fairs, maybe your mentors hooked you up and connected you with someone at their company. Maybe you've gotten some referrals somewhere else. Doesn't really matter. You are about to step into the interview. Maybe you've already had interviews before. This workshop is about how to think about interviews differently. We're bringing in guest speakers who are experts on this topic from around the world to give you insight and wisdom on how to make the most out of the professional interview. So this workshop is going to be about 45 minutes long with, and I encourage you to ask questions throughout the workshop. I'm going to ask you 3 questions during the workshop, which I'll have you answer. That's how you get credit for being here. You're now midway through the program so far. You should have already had your first conversation with your mentor. Hopefully you've already started setting up your second conversation with your mentor. If you have not, or you're struggling to get in touch with your mentor, please email support@ambition-in-motion.com. We need to take care of you so then you can get connected and make the most out of this program. So, really, this program is all about how can you prepare for the first professional interview. Really, what you're selling your interviewer on is your ability, essentially your future potential opportunity. Essentially, you are selling them on your potential, because at the end of the day, people are not expecting you to come in and be the expert on XYZ topic. They are expecting you to be a willing learner and someone that's eager to gain knowledge and to be a better professional. If you can convey that, you will get the opportunity. But it will be competitive, especially in highly competitive industries. And I know that anybody that's in this program is more likely than not going into a career that's competitive. I mean, you would not have gotten a mentor had you not wanted to take your level, take your career, take your life to the next level. So with that said, I want to encourage you to keep your head up, keep applying, put yourself out there for more opportunities, and leverage the insight and knowledge that you're getting in these workshops to make yourself and to help you better prepare yourself for the interview. Now, before we get started into our main program, I want to ask you a quick question, and that question is, when it comes to the interview, how do you want people to feel about you? In other words, what feeling are you trying to convey about yourself when you are in an interview? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about that, because I think if we are more intentional about how we want other people to feel about us in the interview, our likelihood of actually having that happen increases substantially. I mean, I've talked about in past workshops, strategy, story, state, which I will talk about in a moment, but this is a really big part of the story part. Like, what is the story that you're telling yourself? Now, I think sometimes we can interpret that as psyching ourselves up, getting ourselves confident, getting ourselves pumped for why we're going to be successful. And I think that's great. But I think if we could take it to another level, that being intentional about how we want other people to perceive us. So if we want them to perceive us as confident, or if we want them to perceive us as knowledgeable, or if we want them to perceive us as eager to learn and having potential, it could be a variety of things. But what I really want you to do is I really want you to identify feelings that you want other people to feel about you when you enter their world. Because you can be intentional about that. Your likelihood of having them actually feel that is much greater. But if you don't set the intention, you have no idea how they're going to feel about you. You've got really no control over it. But if you intentionally think to yourself, I want people to think of me as confident. Okay, what am I going to do that's going to convey convey confidence? Really, it's all about whatever that feeling you want to convey. Make sure that you are taking actions and being intentional about ensuring that other people view you that way, and that you come in trying to actively think about actions that you can take that will help other people perceive you in that light. So let's start under the next part of our workshop. Now, I've talked about this in the past before, and I've talked about this in previous workshops, but one of the big things that I always love to stress is the 3 keys to success in the program. There are 3 of them. That is your strategy, that is your story, that is your state. I bring it up every single time because it is that important. And the reason why it's important is because if we are not honing our strategy, honing our story, honing our state, we are not setting ourselves up for successful. If we let someone else drive our roadmap for us, we could end up in a location that we do not want to be. But if we are intentional about our story, if we're intentional about our strategy, if we're intentional about our state, we are much more likely to get to where we would like to go. It's kind of like the law of attraction. When we put it out there, and we put it out to more people, and we're more intentional about what we want to accomplish, and we're more intentional about how we are going to convey our bodies and ourselves to other people, the likelihood that it comes back to us is much greater. So I want to talk about state. State is the most important thing. Like physically, where are you at in your life, in your world? What is going on? I don't care how stressed you are. I don't care how mad you are. I don't care how dejected you are. I don't care of anything negative going on in your world. If you can get yourself into a state conducive for being successful, especially for the interview, you will be successful. I'm a big proponent of power poses. I'm a big proponent of screaming at the top of your lungs and dancing out. In fact, I'd like to do that with you right now. So for the next 30 seconds, what I like you to do is I like you to stand up. I like you to shimmy it out. I like you to shake it out. I like you to scream at the top of your lungs. Just scream at the top of your lungs at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Just let it out. Let it loose. Let it go, because you've got nothing to lose. I don't care if it's a popularity contest. I don't care if you're in a library. I don't care if you're in a house. What do you have to lose? This is not a coolness effort here. It's about making an impact and preparing yourself physically for being successful. What is the price of success? Getting yourself into a state conducive for being successful. Maybe looking a little weird to some of your colleagues, coworkers, or peers, but what is that cost to you in the long run? Nothing. They're going to say, hey, what were you doing? Why were you dancing? Why were you screaming at the top of your lungs? You say, hey, I'm getting myself in a state conducive for being successful. Maybe they've never heard about it before. Maybe they've never learned. You can educate them on this. So don't worry about how other people are perceiving you when you are going to get yourself into a state that's going to level up your game, especially when it comes to the interview. Now, you may not want to do this in the office of a business that you are about to interview in, but you could certainly do it in the bathroom, in a bathroom stall. Get yourself into a 2-minute power pose. Stand up like Superman or Superwoman, or put your arms out like as if you're a star. There's a lot of things that you can do to get yourself into a state conducive for being successful, but you should be doing something, because if you're not, you are letting the way that other people perceive you essentially come up to chance. And you don't want to chance it, especially for the opportunity of a lifetime. And you have no idea which opportunity is the opportunity of a lifetime. It may not be this job. It could be the next one. If you make a positive impression in an interview and you may not land that job, that interviewer could have really loved how you interviewed, and that person may not be at that company for forever, or they might be, and they might come up with a new job. They might reach out to you personally to have you come and interview. It's all about the relationship. It's all about how they perceive you. It's all about that impression you leave. Your state is critical. Now, what is the story you tell yourself for why you are going to be successful? This is something we kind of did earlier when I asked you, how do you want other people to feel about you in the interview? This is a great exercise to prepare yourself for a professional interview. If you are intentional about how you want other people to feel about you, you are going to put yourself into a position to succeed, because then you're much more likely to manifest that outcome. Literally, law of attraction, putting it out there. I want other people to feel XYZ about me. Confident, smart, intelligent, well prepared. I don't care what it is. Maybe it's a weakness that you have, but you like to have them perceive it as a strength. Maybe it's a strength that you have that you'd really like to amplify even as a greater strength. Doesn't matter, but set an intention of something. Because if you don't set an intention of something, it could be wild in terms of what they actually perceive of you. Now, the last key is your strategy. What are the things that you're going to do to make the most out of this interview? Are you going to come prepared with questions? Are you going to come prepared with doing background research on the company? Are you going to make an intentional, focused effort on taking notes during the conversation, so then you're asking poignant, direct questions to the interviewer that are relevant about his or her life? Are you going to do the things that you need to do to be the most successful in an interview, or are you not? So the strategies you're going to learn from our guest speaker later on in this workshop, I think you're going to really enjoy what our guest speaker has to say. But before we jump into our guest speaker, I want to talk about one final thing, and that is getting yourself into a routine that can help you prepare for an interview. One of the things that I like to do, have an accountability partner. This could be it could be anybody, but what you want to do with your accountability is you want to share with your accountability partner 3 things that you learned this week and 1 thing that you've done to get closer to that internship or job. What this does, and you might think this sounds silly, you might think this sounds crazy, it could be another student in the program, it could be a friend of yours, does not matter. But what we've learned, what we've observed is that students who land jobs and internships through this program are substantially more likely to actually land that job and internship if they told other people about their experience. One of the questions we ask at the end of the question is, on average, how many other people did you tell about your experience in the program? What we ended up learning was that when a student told 20 or more people about their experience in Ambition in Motion, their likelihood of also landing their job and internship was substantially higher than students who didn't. There's a direct correlation to you telling more people about your experience and what you're learning in this program to actually landing the outcomes you like than not. So I want to challenge you to identify an accountability partner. Share with them 3 things that you've learned this week and one thing that you've done to help you get closer to landing that job or internship. Now, the other big thing that I want to bring up with you is our referral program. So we are now starting to open up the applications. And one, I'd love for you to be in part of the program again. You can get a new mentor, you're going to get new content, you're going to learn from new speakers. But more importantly, I want you to encourage other students to get involved as well. We have a referral program for you, so then you are discounted to get in the program next semester. Essentially, anytime that anybody applies, we ask them, how'd you hear about us? If they write in your name, you get credit. If you don't mind being an ambassador for this program, I'm helping encourage other students to get involved and take advantage of this. I would greatly appreciate it because it would help us make a bigger impact on more people, which is really what our goal is. So let's jump into our workshop. I'm so excited for you to meet our guest speaker. I'm so excited to transition into this next part of the workshop. Remember to answer the 3 questions that we asked during the workshop. That's how you get credit for being here within 24 hours of the workshop going live. If you got any questions, any concerns, any issues with anything at all, please email support@envision-in-motion.com. We will answer those questions, concerns, and issues. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited for you to meet our guest speaker.
Hey everyone, I am so excited to dive into our interview today. So we're here to talk about how to prepare for the interview. So I would imagine a lot of you are in this phase of, interviewing for jobs, interviewing for internships, trying to figure out what is the right position for me, where do I go, how do I determine my next steps. Fortunately, we've got a great professional with us here today. We've got Suzanne Frawley. She has been doing HR for a very long time. She's interviewed a lot of candidates. She knows what she's talking about. Suzanne, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Garrett. Thanks for the invite.
So, Suzanne, I know you have interviewed a lot of people before, and I know that you've gone through the interview process both as someone who's interviewing for a role as well as someone who's also interviewing candidates. The first thing when it comes to any interview, the resume. How do I even get the conversation even flowing? Because more often than not, people are going to look at my resume, especially for a college student, before meeting me in person. So I guess the first step is, what are employers looking for when reviewing a person's resume or cover letter?
It starts out with really some of the basics. Do you use proper grammar? Do you use punctuation? Do you have white space on your resume? Once we get into what I like to call the results or the accomplishment statements, basically what you've accomplished, it's about, do you stick the landing? So do you explain exactly what it was, what you did, and what was the result? How did it turn out? So because we're looking at this past performance predict future performance.
Okay, I have a controversial question to ask.
Okay.
And I'd be very intrigued to know your answers to this question. But ChatGPT, what are your thoughts on ChatGPT resumes and cover letters? Should people use them? Should people not use them? Can you tell the differences between a handwritten resume and or cover letter and a ChatGPT written one? And like you talk about grammar, you talk about making sure it's all right. ChatGPT is not going to mess up on the grammar, but it's not really them who's submitting it. I don't know. I know it's kind of a controversial topic, but what are your thoughts on ChatGPT and the resume and application process?
If it helps you get started by using ChatGPT, like rewrite this accomplishment statement, by all means use it. The thing is that you want to make it sound like you when you put it into the resume. You want to make sure that you're using the keywords that are in the job description. You want to make sure that you're using words that you tend to use. ChatGPT tends to be a little verbose, and so there's some particular words that really stand out when you use ChatGPT. Delve is one of them. Also, it's when you can use, and this may sound, very counterintuitive, when you can use a simpler word, use a simpler word. You don't need to use, a bunch of complex words because you're getting the 5-second review initially. So you want to stand out. So I'm not against using ChatGPT. I've used it myself, but it's then how do I take it, refine it, and make it my own?
Love that answer. You know what? That is such a good answer, Suzanne. I feel like some people would be anti ChatGPT, or some people are like ChatGPT all the way. I loved your answer because it toes the middle ground of like, here's the thing. Here's a great resource out here, ChatGPT or AI in general, that we can use to make our resumes better. But we can't just be lazy about it. We have to be really particular about what words we're trying to do. And also, we should use it as a starting point just to get an idea as to what to include in our resumes, which, by the way, I think is a great thing because I personally believe that we are our own worst enemy of judging our own resumes. So if ChatGPT can give us a draft to get us started, we can then zhuzh it and iterate it to make it more about us. I think that sounds like what you're describing. So I think like, here's a resource, use it, but don't have it be your end all be all because it's not going to work.
Absolutely. And, we say that you start, it starts with a human, use your AI, but then it ends with human. So whenever I'm pulling something from ChatGPT, I'll put it in a Word document, and then I massage it before I put it into the final document. So I don't want it to look like, because there's some systems that can tell this came from AI.
Okay, I've got a question for the students. Students, post this in the comments section. I'd be curious to know, one, if you've used ChatGPT or any AI for that matter to help you with your resume and cover letter, what did you find about it to be the most helpful? And or if you've not used ChatGPT to help you with building your resume or cover letter, how would you like it to help you most? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn more about that. So, Suzanne, what are great questions students can ask to show that they've done their homework and show interest in the role? So let's say we're able to land the interview, we get the interview going, and so often, I know this sounds silly, but so often I'll interview candidates and I'll be like, so what questions do you have for us? And they're like, I think we're good. You're like, that is the wrong answer. Bad answer to the question. Like, I want to know if you've done your homework. So are there any tips or tricks that you suggest students do to ask the right questions in an interview to show that they've done their homework, that they've done their research, that they're genuinely interested? Because like, if you don't have any questions for me, you're communicating to me that you don't care about this job, that like you have not done any research, that you don't know what's going on here. And if that's the case, then why would I hire you?
Yeah, some of the really questions that you're demonstrating, you've done your homework. Some of the obvious, look at the company website, and what are they highlighting on their website? What are maybe some recent press releases that they've been working on? If they're a publicly traded company, what are their financials? What are some of the questions that maybe some of the analysts maybe even listen or read the transcript from a most recent company? Hey, here's our company numbers. Here's the oversight. Here's what we see, and those particular. Those are all helpful. You also want to look at, if there's something negative, you want to look at what the negative is. Is there something to it? And you want to look at multi-sites, because the company website will be positive, but if there are other related items, whether it's Bloomberg or it's Forbes or Wall Street Journal or anything along those lines, you want to look at those resources as well as on LinkedIn. If you can find someone that is in the organization that maybe you can get an introduction to, or you have a second connection to, that you can, hey, I'm interviewing with the company, I have a couple of questions. Maybe you're asking about the culture. Maybe you're asking how well they align to strategy. Possibly someone within that organization will be happy to answer some questions for you, high level, to give you some further insight into the organization.
Okay, delicate dance question, because you brought up this concept of potentially bad news. There's been a lot of changes going on in the workplace, whether companies go through reductions in force or reorgs or whatever. It can create some very interesting press. How, as an applicant, can I address that question without sounding like a, negative Nancy, or someone that's like trying to bring how can I use this as a way to better understand the culture, show that I'm educated about the situation, and not poo-poo on the company? Does that question make sense?
Yes. And great question, great point. It's one of those things, I was reading lately that you had a press release, you did, and I know there's all been challenging economic times. There were some reductions in force. Walk me through how often that has happened in the past 5 years. And so you can find out kind of what's their history, how many times have they done reduction in force, how many layoffs have they had, because that gives you every time is there trouble, is there a knee-jerk reaction to go lay off people. Sometimes you need to do that as an organization. Sometimes, what's their driver financially? And that's another question to ask or look for on the website. What seems to be the big financial driver for an organization? Is it top line growth? Is it profit? Is it EBIT? Is it EBITDA? Is it total shareholder return? What's their big driver? What's their big metric? And you'll be able to tell that from, financial meetings, shareholder meetings, et cetera.
That's such a great question, because that does show a lot about an organization. Like, for example, if you're a student interviewing for a startup, very well profitability could be pretty low on the totem pole for them. Maybe it's top line revenue growth. And even though the revenue growth is going like this and their expenses are growing like that, they're okay with it because they're relying on investors to make up that difference. And maybe for them, it's all about a hype train. And by the way, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different type of culture and a different type of organization. Whereas if you're in an organization where like the revenues and the growth is steady, meaning they're really focused on profitability and minimizing expenses, that'll give you some insights as well too. I guess maybe I'd be curious to know, in your experience, Suzanne, like if you're looking at an organization that's more focused on, let's say, top line revenue growth versus an organization that's just profitability oriented, what are the ramifications for choosing one type of organization or another?
And this is, my financial advisor answers a lot of these questions as well. It depends. So it depends as to, what your comfort level is. Like a startup is definitely going to be, how are we generating cash? Are we, we're making, quote unquote, we're generating money, but, what's the bottom line usually comes later on. How mature is the organization? How long, do you want this to be a career? Do you want this to be a stepping stone? What do you want to be looking for? And, know too that if, depending on what the cash on hand is, what their debt ratio is, that's also something that you want to take into account when you're looking, because it all goes with your comfort level as well.
Can compensation come in any other form besides cash? And I asked that question because I think there are things like benefits to be considering when it comes to choosing a role. But there's also such thing as, like, you bring up this concept of like a startup, like the risk reward profile of that is like the risk is you end up getting fired within the next 9 months because the company goes under. No fault of your own, but it was a risky endeavor going for a startup. But the potential reward is the company takes off, and one of the compensation benefits you get is in title, where you become an SVP in like 3 to 4 years, when on a different trajectory at a much larger, more established organization, SVP title might not come for 15 to 20 years. So, like, I guess, how do you evaluate other forms of compensation, and where do you put that on your priority list?
Well, I'm in a different place in my career, but it does come into play, especially when you need to look at the whole benefits package. So that's your typical, your medical, your dental, your vision, but also what kind of 401k do they have? Do they also have wellness programs that you're interested in? Do they have, some organizations have wellness and discount programs that may be important to you. What are they giving you in vacation? What are they looking for there? And then is there bonus or is there bonus potential? So whatever the compensation is, whatever the range of starting salary is, the burden rate for an organization in benefits is, between 28-29%. So whatever your salary is, there's another 28-29% that the organization is chipping in for your benefits. So you want to take a look at that, as well as with the 401k, what's company match. That's a big help. Some do deferred compensation. Some do I've seen some organizations they may offer less in a base salary, but the bonus potential is much higher. Some organizations, they may offer less in base salary than some others, but you get a company car or company car allowance, depending on what the role is. So, all of those trade-offs, you need to take into consideration, as well as, what's the cost of living for the area that you're looking in.
I love that you're bringing these points up. I have another delicate scenario, but very relatable to my situation, as I have a newborn baby. But if you are a person entering the workforce and you plan on having children, how do you approach that conversation without raising the alarm bells? Because I would imagine, I know you're not allowed to discriminate against people for having children, but invariably it happens. It's just call for what it is. It's not right. It's wrong. But if someone's like, hey, what's your paternity or maternity leave policy? How do you ask that without raising the alarm bells of this person's looking to have a baby, which means that they're going to be gone for a period of time once that baby arrives? I'm just saying this as a new dad, but I'd be curious to know, what is your advice for anybody interested in broaching that topic of, I would like to be a parent someday? What benefits do you have for new parents?
Mm-hmm. It's most organizations will send their benefits booklet as you're in the interview process, and certainly as they're interested in you, they will send their benefits booklet. So certainly look through that, because that will include new parents, adoption services, and if they're 50 or more employees, you certainly qualify for FMLA as well. But their FMLA policy a lot of times is included in that, so that'll be included in that benefits booklet. So that's one thing that you want to look at, and do keep in mind, if you're, planning on starting a family, you're going into an organization, know that FMLA usually kicks in, after you've been with the company a year. So figure that in your planning.
Very smart. I'm so glad that you touched on all those key points. I had to do this with my wife, and yes, there was a lot of key factors. I'm glad that you brought all those things up. And I think, students, if you're hearing that right, instead of asking for a specific benefit, perhaps asked, would you be open to sending me your benefits package so I could better understand what benefits you're providing to your employees? And by the way, if you're a great employer with great benefits, you brag about that. That's something you sing from the rooftop of what your parental policy is, because it's you're proud. I think for most companies, you're proud. If you've got if you've got good benefits, you're very proud of it, and you want to, sing that from the rooftop, because sometimes it's sure, pay might be here, and there might be another company that pays a little bit higher, but if the benefits are, really generous, I mean, shoot, pay is not everything. Let's put it like that.
Yes, very true. And that's something that I haven't seen a company yet not want to tout, the benefits package that they offer, because that is definitely an attractor. As well as, some companies will give a little more vacation, or they'll tout how many company holidays they give, corporate holidays. They'll do that just to try and attract people, because, they know that, time off is important as well.
Yeah, I just could see a funny commercial being you celebrate Flag Day? We do.
Yes. It all depends. It all depends.
That's right. Yeah, I'm teasing. What is the biggest mistake an applicant can make during the interview process? I think as students, we don't ever want to, I don't think anybody intentionally falls into the trap of making a big mistake, but gosh, if we can avoid some stumbling blocks ahead of time, what are those stumbling blocks?
Really, it's not answering the question or not listening to the question. So it's if you answer a question with what you think I want to hear, versus answering the question with what is the question, and telling me about your relevant experience. So telling me about, what was your situation? What was the problem that you were tackling? Exactly what you did, what your role was, and then what was the outcome or result. And it doesn't always have to be quantitative. Many times, I got this particular feedback, or I was invited to do more of this. That lets the interviewer know that, okay, they know the outcome of this. They didn't just walk away, but they're also, I call it sticking the landing. So that's one of the things that I see get missed in interviews. The other thing that I've seen happen in interviews is what I call editorials. And I'll give you an example. I was interviewing a young lady one time, and she gave me a good answer. And then she said, yes, I was working with sales. You know how difficult those salespeople can be. And I looked and I said, no, not really. Do you say more? So you can get yourself into a hole on that, but it's also, just those unnecessary editorials, don't make them. Just answer the question, and if you can, offer. I have another example if you'd like one. Offer that up too.
I love, Suzanne, your advice is, I could not agree more. I'm so glad that you brought all these points up. So, I know obviously not every student's in sales, but there's this premise in Sandler sales, which, even if you're interviewing, you're selling yourself. You're selling yourself for why you should get this job. But one of the core premises of Sandler sales is you never knock the competition. And that editorial is so spot on. You don't knock another company. You don't knock another people. Like, if you do that and you're talking smack about somebody else, as an interview, I'm thinking to myself, if I hire you, we're going to be talking smack about me, because I don't want that. I don't want that at all. That makes me feel like I'm in a two-faced type of relationship here. That is so critical. And then I also loved that to answer. The only thing I would maybe add to that is also brevity. Look at Suzanne's answers. She's crisp, she's concise, she listens to the exact question that I've asked her, and she does it in an effective manner. I've been on interviews where I ask one question, and the response is the whole half hour. You're like, oh my goodness, what are we doing? I can't even get to questions 2 through 5 because you've been telling me the longest, most drawn out story I've ever heard in my life. And it's keep it to the point. Whatever the question is, answer that question and move and go on. Your interviewer's got questions for you. Trust me. There's more to cover. Don't try to fit in all what you think their questions are in one answer, because it's not helpful and it's not going to work.
And and think in past tense, because they want to know what you actually did. Words like for me, words like I would, I think, I believe, I usually. Those are all words. Those are vague. Those are theoretical. So, I'll come back and say, well, walk me through an example of when you actually did that. And, I'm looking for and tell me a story, tell me about a time. And that's okay. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay. I'm so glad you bring this up. What are your thoughts on practicing this story? I think sometimes I ask a question in an interview and someone is sitting there thinking about it and then contemplating what story to tell in the moment, and then telling me a long, super, super long story that could have been told in probably 30 to 45 seconds, but ends up going on for 5 minutes because they didn't have all the details together. What are your thoughts on practice? What's advice do you have for students to practice?
Always practice, and find a friend. Find a mentor that you can practice interviewing with. And, I look at, and here's another, you can use AI for this. You can take the job description, put it into ChatGPT and say, what kind of questions would a hiring manager ask me? And it'll give you some potential questions. If, you don't need to come up with them on the fly, and it'll give you some pretty good questions that you can come up with. And then take those questions and have a friend or a mentor ask you those questions and practice answering succinctly. And the other thing to do as well, I write a lot of answers out just to get my answers down, that they're concise and they're clear. And also, the funny thing happens when I'm writing them out, I will think of another example or even maybe a better example. And you want to think of examples, these, earlier in career, they're going to be more recent examples, in the past, 1 to 3 years are super ideal to use in these kind of interviews.
Oh my gosh. Suzanne, you and me are in lockstep. I totally agree. I think writing things out is one of the most cathartic activities you can do, not just for writing out your answers to an interview, but thinking about different systems or processes or just things going on in your life, a way to process that situation just by journaling it out. Just get it on the piece of paper. Really, really powerful stuff. So I guess let me take the time to ask the students a question real quick. What can you do right now to help you prepare to share your stories in an interview, post in the comment section. I'd love to learn. So Suzanne, how should an applicant follow up after the interview? What does that follow-up process look like? What is effective etiquette for following up? What is not effective etiquette for following up? What are your thoughts on that?
Most nowadays would expect an email follow-up is just fine. However, and it's more than just a thank you. You want to put in what were some key things that the interviewer brought out during that interview, and you want to reiterate, what you can bring to the table. And I mean, 2 to 3 points. It doesn't need to be lengthy, but you want to certainly thank them for their time. Thank you for the questions, the insight that you gained, and look forward to hearing about next steps. Again, this is one that I know that in the past I've put into ChatGPT and just let ChatGPT comes out with a lot of options. And so then I pare it down from there. And then again, I make it my own.
I love that. Okay, I've got a crazy idea for students. Take it if you want to. I know this may sound like, Garrett, this is in the 1700s, but writing a handwritten letter, a thank you letter I've gotten jobs because I wrote a handwritten thank you letter. It's going to take the interviewer a long time to deliberate after the interview anyways. Yes, it'll take like a week in the mail to get to the interviewer, but if you can figure out their address, you can put their name on a card, you can write them a quick little thank you letter, put that stamp on it, send it in the mail. That will take you from wherever you're at in the standings to the top you're going to get a second look. And a lot of times people in the interview process, especially for a very competitive role, you could be affected and impacted by the implicit bias of that interviewer on that day, because maybe they got in a fight with their significant other that morning. They come in a bad mood to the interview, not to your fault at all. You had no impact whether or not they are in a bad mood or a good mood, whatever, but that impacted their perception of you, and therefore you could get bottom of the stack. If you want to pull yourself out of that bottom of the stack, write a handwritten thank you letter, especially for a job you really, really want, send it out. You will immediately get a second look. People will be like, who was Garrett? I remember that interview. I was having a rough day that morning, but you know what? He did make some really good points. Let's give a follow-on interview to Garrett. And now you got this organization with a second chance. And now granted, it may not land you the job, but it certainly will give them a second look.
I'm going to add on to that by saying a number of organizations that I joined. One of the comments that interviewers make said, you were the only person that sent a handwritten thank you, and really appreciate that. That was real. And you didn't write the same note to everybody, to all the interviewers. And so for them to come back and comment after I was hired, it meant something.
Well, and some students might be like, well, my handwriting sucks. My handwriting sucks. But it's the gesture oftentimes that matters. And do your best. Write it slowly. Don't speed right through it. But, you don't need to be like Picasso with your handwriting over here. You just need to get the message across that you're grateful that they took the time to meet with you and consider you for the role. That's it. You do that, it really does go a long way. So, Suzanne, how should a student handle having multiple this is a great one. How should students handle having multiple offers or receiving one offer while waiting for another? Because the difference between the normal working world and the student world is, if I'm a current college student and it's the fall semester and I won't start for my job till the summer, this is a weird scenario where I could get an offer and have like 4 or 5 months before I actually start the job itself. How should students handle that sort of scenario? I think I've seen a lot of students handle it poorly. How do you suggest people handle that?
It's when you do get an offer, it's certainly thank you for the offer, and it's you want to look and see how many days that you have to respond. Usually they will include that in the offer, and it's certainly a balance between you don't want to discourage that particular company because they probably have another option. But you also, if you know for sure you're getting another offer, then you may want to reach out to your contact at that organization and say, I just want to share with you, I'm very interested in the role that I interviewed for. I wanted to share that I just received an offer from a company, and I wanted to share that with you. And just share it. That's all you're saying. You don't share what the offer is. You don't share any details, but I'm very interested in working with you, and let them take it from there. If they've got an offer ready, they'll get it to you.
Yeah. Oh. So if you don't have an offer yet, but said you got an offer from another organization, I like that. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I am not as well. I don't know. I feel like my tune has changed on this subject a little bit over the years. I think before I was always one of those where like, don't commit until like you're 100% ready to commit. I think I've changed a little because like if you go to an employer and they give you an offer and you say, hey, can I have a little bit of an extension to make this decision? No one wants to feel like second fiddle. Like that's essentially what you're communicating. Like if I'm a hiring manager, even if you end up working for me, I always have that sour taste in my mouth of like, this person didn't want to work here, or like this person was considering other offers. So I think, I don't know, maybe more lately, I'm a fan of if you're cool with working for the company, accept it. And if another offer comes in, I don't know. Here's one thing that I heard someone do one time, and I thought it was pretty powerful. Now, granted, he had not accepted the role from the other organization. He got the offer, but he got another offer for like almost double the money. It was like the comp package was just like the original offer was here, the comp package was here, and he went to the hiring manager and he said, hey, Tina, I have recently received an offer. I was hoping we could do a pros cons list. I was hoping we can do like just a high level pros cons list, like your offer versus this offer. Can we do it together? I just want to go through it and see if there's some things that I might be missing. And the reason why that was so powerful was because Tina was like, unfortunately, Philip, you're going to have to take this job with this other organization. It beats our offer. But once you've been there for like 8 months, we can then upgrade you to this other role in our organization where I have a lot more wiggle room. I can increase the comp package to something like this, and I think you'd really enjoy working with me. And then, it wasn't 8 months, it was 2 years. Philip ended up coming back and working for her, and it worked out great. And he didn't burn that bridge. He went in, was transparent. She was transparent, like, I can't match that offer. It's a great offer. You should take it. But after a certain period of time and you get this experience, I can then elevate you to a different role and, we can work together. And they did. And it worked out great. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Suzanne?
Oh, I think that's a very good approach. And it's nice to be in a situation where you have multiple offers coming in. And, sometimes it's first offer, best offer. Sometimes, but you don't want to burn any bridges. And it sounds like your friend handled it absolutely brilliantly. That's a great way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, because you're not offending. I don't think any hiring manager would be offended. Now, granted, this is in the student space, but like, I don't think a hiring manager would be offended if a student who they had made an offer to came to them and said, hey, I've gotten another offer. This is what it looks like. Can you help me come up with a pros cons list? Like, I think if you're like a good human being and you're not a sociopath, you're going to look at it and be like, yeah, you know what? Objectively, this role might be better. Or you might be missing some things. We offer a great benefits package that I think could compare to this benefits package. And like, just be open about it. And ideally, that hiring manager can have the self-awareness to recognize, like, man, this person could have ghosted me. This person could have said nothing and then just taken this other offer and not considered my perspective on it. But instead, they allowed me to metaphorically, sing for your supper and like give, maybe new light to the role that person had not considered.
And let's know kind of what's out there and what the competition is. And, understandably, not everybody can up their offer just, based on the role, based on what their, internal equity is. They're not making it up. They can't do it.
That's exactly it. And maybe you have to wait till you get a little experience and you're like, boomerang back, come on back. We can work with that because once you've got experience, I'm not doing an entry level role. I'm now doing a more experienced role. And that's something that we can pay higher for because, you've got some experience on that. So absolutely. I want to ask the students a question real quick. How would you handle having multiple offers? Post in the comments section. I would love to learn more. So Suzanne, I want to go back just real quick on the offers component of it, what if you've accepted a role, you said yes, and then you got another offer that was better? How would you handle that sort of scenario?
It's one that you want to call the company. And let's say you want to accept the second offer, you really want to do that one. Certainly go back to the first company and say, I've received another offer. You could do the pros cons list. You could say that, this particular offer, if you can come up with another week's vacation, then, let's definitely talk. So it's always good to let them know that there is a competitor. You have had another offer. You didn't know it was coming. Because nobody likes to be played. But just make sure that second offer that if the first one pulls there, because they could pull their offer, just know that you do want to go with the second one. So you don't want to burn any bridges, but you want to be honest with the talent acquisition professional that you're working with.
And you know what? You're right. Like at the end of the day, I've also seen a lot of students where they got an offer, they accepted said offer. They got to the summertime. They're like, all right, ready to get started. They're like, hey, the economy's turned around and we don't have an offer. We're pulling it. And so like it can go both ways. And so that's why I've started leaning more towards just accept it if you think it's good enough and that you could see yourself working in this role. And, if something better comes along, keep everybody apprised. Don't ghost anybody, and definitely don't accept both jobs. And have you ever encountered anybody that worked 2 full-time jobs and you caught them? I've heard, I feel like because of COVID and the pandemic, I've heard way more cases of that over the last maybe 2 years than I've ever heard in my life. Have you ever encountered anything like that before?
I've certainly ran into a few folks that were working 2 jobs, and some were trying to transition out of one before they got into another. But I have heard that happening. I don't recommend it. But it's because basically, unless you're going to work 16 hours a day, you're taking time, you're stealing time from one company for the other that you're getting a paycheck for. And, from an ethical standpoint, it just doesn't work ethically, at least for me internally. But if one or other employers find out, it's just not a good scene.
Yeah, no, it's not a good look. Well, Suzanne, this was a great interview on how to prep for the interview. Are there any final tips or bits of wisdom you'd like to share with our students? And also, is there any way that our students can connect with you? Or are you on LinkedIn at all? Are you okay if they
I'm on
LinkedIn?
Yeah, Suzanne Frawley. And reach out, reference this, and I'd be happy to connect or do my best to share some sage piece of advice. I'll also say that, and I think it goes without saying, but I need to say it. When you go for the interview, make sure that you've got a good idea as to the dress there. Usually you can't go wrong with, and I don't mean for gentlemen a full formal suit, but I mean, even if it's a sport coat, ratchet it up rather than down. And, same thing for ladies. You can't go wrong with, a pantsuit and err, if you're not as conservative, but err on the side of conservative, because they're looking for that too. It just depends what kind of organization that you're going into. Just know that as well, that you've got a little bit of idea as to what kind of culture you're walking into.
I love that. Great advice. Great perspective. Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for your time. Students, thank you all for your time. I look forward to seeing you in our next workshop.